Hey Pancakes, what's up with you guys? So I decided that I'm going to do a new series every week up until Dragon Con, which is going to be the last weekend in August. And I just thought it would be really fun to do like preparations for a convention, what I personally do to get ready for convention, things that I pack, how to enjoy your convention while also trying to like stay cheap and stuff like that. And so I hope you guys enjoy. If you have anything to add to the video, just leave it in the comments below. This is going to be like kind of like a help thing. If anyone has any other things to add, I just spread the help because it's nice to have other people who can add other things into the conversation. So this week, week one, I guess, is going to be about how to start your costume, like tips for beginners who are just starting out. Ideally, you would not be starting this late before a convention, but if your convention is like in October or something like that, or maybe November, this would be a good time to start working on the costume for that convention. So like I said, this is going to be tips for beginners video, and I have my Lisa Frank costume thing ready to go. I've had this thing since I was a kid, and I thought it would be perfect to write down all the information that I can give to you guys in this beautifully colored notebook thing. So tip number one is to do a ton of research on the character that you are dressing up as. And I don't mean just like, hey, I decided I'm gonna cosplay as Wonder Woman, I'm gonna go look at what her costume looks like. I mean like you have to do as much digging on your character as possible. That helps you so much better in the long run. In my experience, it helps because then you know your character, you know what their personality's like, and you really know how you can go about making the costume. Now, if you're dressing up from a movie or a TV show or a video game, most likely there's concept art released of the character or a character model. I would definitely try to find those because those are really where you're gonna get the best, like, clearest picture or something that's the most accurate. Concept art's just really, really useful to have. It can come in handy in so many different ways. I would just make a folder for the costume that you're making and just fill it up with a ton of pictures for reference because you never know when they could come in handy. I also recommend looking at other cosplayers to see what they have done because most likely in this day and age a lot of cosplayers like to put up step-by-step things on how they make parts of their costume, especially if it's something a bit more complicated, and that way you can not be as stumped. If you have something really hard to make, then you can base it off of something that they did. Don't steal it, but ask for permission first and then base your costume off of what they have done or use their costume as inspiration. That's what I've always found is really helpful, especially when there's a costume that's a bit unorthodox, like having Merida's puffy sleeve things. I had to look up what other people did because I had no idea how to tackle it yet before I knew that there was actually just a pattern for Merida's costume. Tip number two is try to learn something new when you start a new costume. Now I've always learned something new when I've started a new costume, whether it be a new part of sewing that I didn't know, how to measure something better. There's so many things that you can learn while you're making a costume, and I think it's impossible to not learn something new, but definitely try to like step outside of your comfort zone with every costume that you make, because you just never know what you could learn, and they could be actual important life skills that would come in handy later on in life. It could be something as easy as learning how to sew a button, which I thought was really complicated before I actually did it, and it was just the easiest thing. And now I know how to sew buttons and make buttonholes and hand stitch. Those are three things that I didn't know how to do last year that now I know how to do this year. So if you can, step outside your comfort zone with sewing or with making props. Tip number three is ask for a lot of help. Now, I already ask for a lot of help anyways. I just really like to know what I'm doing when I'm working on a costume, so if I were you, I would definitely ask friends for help as soon as you feel slightly stumped, but also at the same time, once you have their input, trust your instincts, because I think that's where this comes into play. Once you're asking people for help, you're kind of formulating your own ideas in your head as to how to go forward, and that's really what, like, I think getting advice from other people is either you can use their advice or you can take their advice and make your own decision from that point. You and your friends aren't always going to agree on what would be best for your costume, but in the end, it is your costume, so you have to make the right decision as to what would work best for you. Tip number four. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I would always try to start a costume at least 3 to 4 months beforehand because you don't know how complicated the costume's gonna get until you start making it. That's one thing I've learned.
And I've never not finished a costume for a convention because normally it's in this in-between MomoCon and normally MomoCon and AWA from May to September, which is a really big chunk of time to work on costumes and get everything sorted. So if I were you, I'd definitely take as much time as possible to start a costume because you just don't know like what your schedule's gonna look like in a few months, if you're even gonna have the time to do it. So while you have the time, start working on it. And that can be something as simple as looking at pictures for your costume or planning trips to the fabric store. Just putting an effort towards doing your costume as early as possible will always help you out and be a lot less stressed than doing it 3 in the morning the day before the convention. I know, I've been there. Not fun. Tip number 5 is to always look for coupons when you go shopping. Now, I have a Joann's fabric store that is about 19 miles away from my house, and then I have a Hobby Lobby, but I try not to go to Hobby Lobby because of everything that's happened, but I go to Hobby Lobby anyways. There's a lot that Hobby Lobby has that I take advantage of, and they do have decent prices, so it's worth it. Joann's has the best amount of fabric that's close. I've gotten a lot of my fabric from Joann's, and they normally have a 40% off of one item or a 50% off of one item or even a 15% off of your entire purchase. They'll take as many coupons as you can dish out. So if you have a place near you that has coupons, take advantage of those coupons and plan a big trip with your friends. That's normally what I do because it's not very close. I always just kind of am like, hey, let's go to Joann's and get stuff because you never know what you could find when you're there. It's always just kind of like a hit or a miss sometimes, and that way you can save money on gas and all that, which I'm really picky and stingy about. I don't like using gas if I can avoid it. But definitely take advantage of any coupons that any fabric store has near you. It'll help you out a lot in the long run. And tip number 6 that I can give to you beginner cosplayers is to make a ton of lists. And I really like making lists. I know a lot of people don't really make lists, but I really like making lists. I'm not really very organized when it comes to like my room. Like right now it looks really clean, but I just cleaned it. But when it comes to stuff like this, I just like to be as prepared as possible because there's always something that I forget when I go to Joann's or Hobby Lobby, and I just don't like that feeling of being like, crap, I just forgot to get that. So I make like 6 lists and make sure to bring it with me wherever I go so that I can check it off when I go to the store. And that way it also gives you a better idea of what you need for your costume, because if you're making lists, then you have to be like, okay, I need this, 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 and this for my costume, rather than just being like, okay, I think I need red fabric, but I don't know how much I need. You have to just plan ahead and do as much research on your costume and listing as possible. It helps so much in the long run. So if there's anything else that you guys think that a beginner cosplayer needs to know, leave it in the comments, because this is going to be the helping people out before Dragon Con. If you're going to Dragon Con, then hopefully this helps you out. I'm going to be making one video a week up till Dragon Con about things that I've done for my costumes and helpful tips on traveling to conventions, especially if you live in state, because I've only ever gone to cons in state, so that's really the advice that I could give you guys. If you haven't, then you can give advice for going out of state. But if you guys like the video, give it a thumbs up and let me know what you think. I will see you next week. Have an amazing day! I don't even know if you can still see me or not. I hope you can't see me.